In Chapter 5, we identify strategic planning and briefly discussed what strategic management is. In Chapter 6, we will dive deeper into strategic management. Specifically, we will describe the strategic positioning and the 3 levels of strategy and how the 5 steps of strategic management play into this. We will also discuss SWOT analysis and other tools to help us assess ourselves to reach goals for the organization, as well as other methods such as Porter's 5 competitive forces and the BCG matrix, and why it is important for managers to understand these in helping achieve the goals of their organization. Being able to achieve sustainable competitive advantage is based on how effectively you strategized your plans. Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter is the single most important strategist working today and maybe of all time. It said Kevin Coyne of a consulting firm. He said that he is the most famous and influential business professor who has ever learned and widely regarded as an all-time greatest guru. So according to Porter, strategic positioning attempts to achieve sustainable competitive advantage by preserving what is distinctive about a company. So what makes a company special? What makes them more advantageous or better than another company? He says that it is about performing different activities from rivals or performing similar activities in different ways. So 3 key principles underlie strategic positioning. Strategy is a creation of a unique and valuable position. So there may be few needs, but many people. So strategic position can be derived from serving the few needs of many customers. So for example, Jiffy Lube provides only lubricant, but it also provides them to all kinds of people with all kinds of motor vehicles. So there are broad needs, but few customers. A strategic position may be based on serving the broad needs of just a few customers. So for example, wealth management and investment advisory firm Bessemer Trust focuses exclusively on high net worth clients. So there's broad needs, but few customers. There are a few people that have very high net worth clients. And the third principle is broad needs, many customers. Strategy may be oriented towards serving the broad needs of many customers. For example, National Movie Theater operator Karmika Cinemas operates only in cities with populations of fewer than 200,000 people. Strategy requires trade-offs. A company has to choose not only what strategy to follow, but what strategy not to follow. For example, Neutrogena soap, points out Porter, is positioned more as a medicinal product than a cleansing agent. In achieving this narrow positioning, the company gives up sales based on deodorizing, it gives up large volume, and accordingly gives up some manufacturing efficiencies. Strategy also involves creating a fit among activities. Fit has to do with the ways a company's activities interact and reinforce one another. So for example, a mutual fund such as Vanguard Group follows a low-cost strategy and aligns all its activities accordingly, distributing funds directly to consumers and minimizing portfolio turnover. Strategic management occurs in 3 levels, each level supporting each other. The 3 levels of strategy are corporate level. This strategy focuses on the organization as a whole, answering the question, what business or businesses should we be in? Typically, executives at this level are referred to as the C-suite. The next strategy level is business level. This strategy focuses on individual business units or product service lines. Managers at this level focus on issues aimed at implementing decisions under consideration from corporate level. At this level, they answer the question, how should we compete in the industry? And the final strategy level is functional level. At this level, this strategy applies to the key functional departments or units within the business unit. Functional managers focus on a tactical issue answering the question, how can business functions support the business level strategies? So each levels, as I said, support each other. So what the function, what is implemented by the corporate level strategy trickles down, and what the functional level strategy at the bottom does impacts the overall goal that was set at the strategic level. So they all interact and support each other, so to make sure that what strategy that they implemented or defined is going to be played out. So there are 5 steps to the strategic management process. In this part of the discussion, we are going to discuss what is involved in each of these steps. So step 1 is establish the mission, vision, and value statements, or basically the characteristics of a good mission statement. The mission is the organization's purpose or reason for being. It is expressed in this mission statement. So does your company's mission statement answer some of these questions? So, it should answer who are our customers, what are our major products or services, what is our basic technology, what is our commitment or economic objectives, what is our attitude toward our employees, and there's several other questions as well. What are the characteristics of a good vision statement? An organization's vision, its long-term goal for what it wants to become, is expressed in a vision statement. This describes its long-term direction and strategic intent. So in creating your vision statement for your company, it should answer these questions, or some of these questions. Is it appropriate for the organization and for the time? So is your vision statement that you have for your company appropriate for the organization? Does it set standards of excellence and reflect high ideals? Does it clarify purpose and direction? Is it well articulated and easily understood? Is it ambitious? These are a couple questions, and there are several other questions that when creating a vision statement, they should be answered in that statement. So an organization's values are expressed in a values statement, which should describe what the organization stands for, its core principles or priorities, the values its employees embody, and what its products contribute to the world. So in creating a values statement, it should answer these questions. Does it express the company's distinctiveness, its view of the world? Is it tough, serving as a foundation on which difficult company decision can be made? Will it be unchanging, as valid 100 years from now? So these are a few questions and several other questions that your vision statement should focus on. Step 2 of the strategic management process is assessing the current reality in the strategic management process. We will discuss each of the tools noted in detail, but first, to assess the current reality, you need to look at where the organization stands internally and externally to determine what's working and what's not. So you will also need to see what can be changed so as to increase efficiency and effectiveness in achieving the organization's visions. To do this, there are tools that include competitive intelligence, SWOT analysis, forecasting, benchmarking, and Porter's model of industry analysis, and we will discuss those later in the class. Step 3 of the process is establishing corporate level strategy. So after assessing the current reality, or step 2, the focus turns to corporate level strategies. There are 3 types that we will discuss. The first is growth strategy, which comes after assessing the current reality. It involves the expansion, as in sales revenue, market share, number of employees, or number of customers. So for example, Etsy, which is a Brooklyn, New York company, it's an online marketplace for handmade and vintage goods such as jewelry, housewares, t-shirts. So and it charges a fee to the sellers to use this platform. The firm showed growth in 2015 when revenues for the fourth quarter rose 35%, or $87.9 million. So this is an example of growth strategy. So the second is strategy formulation. This is the process of choosing among different strategies and alternating them to best fit the organization's needs. This translates the broad mission and vision statement into a corporate strategy, which explains how the organization's mission is to be accomplished. So the example of this is without changing their product very much, the makers of Timex decided to stress the theme of authenticity, wear it well, over durability, which was their old slogan, it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. So the final type of corporate level strategy is defensive strategy or retrenchment strategy. And this involves reduction in the organization's efforts. Within this step, there are three methods to help us understand the strategies we just discussed. It is the Boston Consulting Group Matrix, or BCG, and diversification. So, developed by the Boston Consulting Group, the BCG matrix is a means of evaluating strategic business units on the basis of their business growth rates, their share of the market, or their share of the market. Business growth rate is concerned with how fast the entire industry is increasing. Market share is concerned with the business unit's share of the market in relation to its competitors. Market growth is divided into two categories, low and high. Market share is also divided into low and high. Thus, in this matrix, stars are the business units that are highly desirable, high growth, high market share, compared to dogs, which are not desirable. They have low growth and low market share. Another way to understand corporate level strategy is to use diversification. Diversification is a strategy of moving into new lines of business or operating several businesses in order to spread the risk, and your products may be related or unrelated. For example, Amazon buying Whole Foods is one example. Companies diversify their portfolio to make money and spread that risk because their risk is spread over several related or unrelated products. One way that a company can diversify is through vertical integration, where the firm expands into businesses that provide the supplies it needs to make products and that distribute and sell its products. So vertical integration is a specific diversification strategy where the company owns the suppliers and distributors of its products. So for example, Starbucks has long followed a plan of vertical integration by buying and roasting all of its own coffee and then selling it through Starbucks coffee stores. Another way is through unrelated diversification, in which the company acquires another company that is completely unrelated to the business. A perfect example of this is Amazon purchasing Whole Foods. You see the diversification strategy at the smaller retail level when you drive past the store that sells gas and food and souvenirs and rents DVD movies as well. So going back to our strategic management process, we continue our discussion of step 3, where our focus turns to functional strategies. This begins with an assessment of Porter's 5 competitive forces that we briefly identified at the start of this discussion. Companies then are advised to select from one of the 4 competitive strategies for formulating strategy. So Porter contends that business level strategies originate in 5 primary forces in the firm's environment. In other words, the 5 are the threat of new entrants, the bargaining power of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers, the threats of substitutes or of products and services, and the rivalry among competitors is what determines the competitiveness of within a particular industry. So there are 4 competitive strategies identified by Porter. The first one is cost strategy. This keeps the cost and hence the prices of a product or service below those of the competitors and target a wide market. So firms such as Timex, computer maker Acer, hardware retailer Home Depot, and pen maker Bic are examples of this, their cost leadership strategy. The other competitive strategy is differentiation strategy. This focuses on unique and superior products targeting a wide market. This is a strategy followed by Ritz-Carlton hotels and the makers of Lexus automobiles. The next one is cost focus strategy. This keep prices low that target a narrow market, often executed with low-end products sold in discount stores such as low-cost beer, cigarettes, or with regional gas stations. And the final competitive strategy is focused differentiation strategy. And this focuses on unique and superior products targeting a narrow market. Norwegian Cruise Line offers on its cruise ship Norwegian Escape a special section called the Haven for 275 elite passengers who enjoy 24-hour butler service as well as a private pool, sun deck, and restaurant. Okay, let's take a look at this question. So the company's CEO puts pressure on the firm's research and development managers to develop products that can be created cheaply. The firm would be following a blank strategy. If you answered A, cost leadership, you are correct. Remember, a cost leader strategy focuses on keeping costs down. And this one, obviously, our key word here is creating products cheaply. So, and let's recap for a minute. Step one, or stage one of the process, was establishing the mission, vision, and value statements. The next step was to assess the current reality. And one way that I mentioned it earlier, was to do it is by creating a SWOT analysis. So going back to that in reminding us a recap of what SWOT analysis is. So in step two of the strategic management process, in assessing the current reality, one way to do this is by creating a SWOT analysis. So a SWOT analysis should provide you with realistic understanding of your organization in relation to its internal and external environment, so you can formulate a better strategy in pursuit of what your mission is. So it involves environmental scanning by monitoring the organization's internal and external environments to detect early signs of opportunities and threats that may influence the plan. So remember, a recap from Business 1010 and your other business classes. SWOT is a process for scanning would be scanning your internal strengths, scanning your internal weaknesses, meaning what are the strengths internally and weaknesses internally of my company. And then also scanning your external opportunities and threats. What opportunities are out there that you can take advantage of that, are with your strengths, that can be a strength for you as a company. And then what are the threats that are out there? So again, you want to make sure that those threats that are out there, you make into strengths. So the SWOT analysis is divided into two parts, inside matters and outside matters. So this is an analysis of internal strengths and weaknesses and analysis of external opportunities. So, what are the strengths that we have, like I mentioned earlier, what skills and capabilities does our organization have that has a competitive advantage over other companies based on our mission? What are our weaknesses? What are some drawbacks that, hinder our organization from executing those strategies? What are our opportunities? What are those external environmental factors that the organization can exploit so they can use to their competitive advantage? So, and then finally, what are your organizational threats? What are those external environmental factors that hinder your organization from achieving that competitive advantage? So, in step two of the strategic management process, one way to help your organization and have a strategic plan is to assess that current reality. What is your current situation of your company? So let's take a look at this question. When analyzing the W in SWOT analysis, and W stands for weakness, Roberta, the manager, might be assessing. If you chose C, high turnover of employees, you are right. So a high turnover of employees should be reviewed as an internal weakness. So that's within our organization. You need to assess why, as a company, do we have such high turnover of employees. So that is an internal weakness. So another way to assess current reality in step two is the strategic management process is using VRIO, VRIO. And this is a framework for analyzing a resource or capability to determine its company's competitive strategic question by answering 4 questions. So the V is for value, and value means, in answering this question, does the resource or capability allow your firm to exploit an opportunity or neutralize a threat? If the answer is yes, the resource puts you in a competitive position. If no, then you are at a competitive disadvantage. R is rarity. So if the answer to the question is yes, that status gives your firm at least some temporary advantage. If no, you're at least at equal competitive advantage. Imitability. If the answer to the question is yes, that question that gives you a definite competitive advantage. If no, then you are at a temporary competitive advantage. And finally, organization. If you answer the answer yes, That is, the firm, the firm has a necessary structure, culture, employee policies, control systems, financing. Then, assuming yes to value, rarity, and mutability, then it would seem that the firm has the competitive potential to go forward. If not, there may only be a temporary advantage. So within step 2 of the strategic process, once the SWOT analysis has been analyzed, planners need to forecast and or set benchmarks. So the first one we will be discussing is forecasting. So it is a vision or projection of the future. Lots of people make predictions, of course, and often they might be wrong. In the 1950s, the head of IBM estimated that demand for computers would never exceed more than 5 for the entire world. In the late 1970s, many computer experts predicted power outages, water problems, transportation disruptions, bank shutdowns, or worse, because of the Y2 bug. So, with that change from 1999 to 2000, of course, their predictions were wrong. So the further into the future one makes a prediction, the more difficult it is to be accurate. So especially in the matters of technology. Yet, forecasting is necessary part of planning. So there are two types. There are trend analysis and contingency planning. Trend analysis is a hypothetical extension of past series or events into the future. Contingency planning is a creation of alternative hypothetical but equally likely a future condition. This is also called scenario planning and scenario analysis. So on page 201 in our textbook, there is an example of contingency planning, or how CVS, Walgreens, and FedEx coped with Hurricane Harvey. So take a moment to read over that, and after, think about how many companies like FedEx and UPS can prepare in advance for a major weather event like a devastating hurricane. So what other contingency plans could companies like CVS and Walgreens put in place? So as mentioned, after the SWOT analysis has been done, you can also set benchmarks, which is a process by which a company compares its performance with that of high-performing organizations. So to be effective, it depends on comparing many companies on strategically relevant outcomes such as efficiency, customer service, or safety. So for example, airlines use such benchmarks on turnover, on the average turnover time of on-time arrivals, cost per seat, per passenger mile, the fuel cost, the number of lost bags, and so on. So going back to, that was a little bit of a recap of information on step 2 of the strategic process and assess the current value. So in stage 3, we needed to formulate corporate business and functional strategies, and there were plenty of ways we discussed this can be. Once all that has been put into play, it is now time to execute those strategies and maintain control of our process. So in implementing strategy and maintaining strategic control, what we are talking about is effective execution. This consists of using questioning, analysis, and follow through in order to mesh strategy with reality, align people with goals, and achieve those results that were promised. So in executing our strategy, this is putting that strategic plan into effect. It also means dealing with roadblocks within the organization's structure and culture, and seeing if the right people and control systems are available to execute the plan. So a way to ensure that these strategies you have planned and executed and done well is to know your people and your business. This means engaging intensely with your employees, engaging them, hearing them out, what's happening. They are the front line. They know what's happening within the business. So it's important that you know your people and your business and you hear your employees out. Insist on realism. Don't let others avoid reality. Like, this is what it is. This is how it is. And, don't avoid that reality that if something isn't working, just to ignore it. Set clear priorities. Focus on a few rather than many goals. Set them, what is more priority? Focus on that than trying to do so much at one time and then it won't get done effectively. Follow through. Establish accountability and check on results. Reward the doers. Show top performers that they matter. We know as employees we want to be rewarded. We want to have that positive feedback, and that increases morale, and in turn we are able to achieve our goals much quicker. Expand people's capabilities, develop the talent. Know your employees and what their capabilities are, what their talents are, and exploit those or expand those. Use them to your advantage in this strategic plan. And know yourself. Do the hard work of understanding who you are and if it can be done. So in this one, in question 3, John owns a piano sales and a tuning store. He wants to be the biggest retailer in the Midlands. Adding salespeople would be part of. If you answered B, execution, you are correct. So adding salespeople will allow John to execute his plan of being the biggest retailer. So it is a central part of his strategy. So in going back to the strategic process, you need to ensure, first, what is your mission? Values and statements. Assess what your company is. Where is your company at right now? And one way to do that is through a SWOT analysis. Then you begin to formulate your strategies. What strategies are you going to use to execute your goals? Then you execute those strategies after you've done step 3, and then you maintain control. And maintain control is done in several ways. And the reason we do that is to make sure that what we said or what strategy we use is the right strategy. Once we've executed it, did the outcome turn into what we wanted it to be? If it didn't, then you need to maintain strategic control and kind of go back and look to see what happened, what changes can be made. This concludes chapter 6 of our lecture.